So today we are going to discuss about the checked and unchecked exceptions in Java, right? So what is checked exception? So guys, checked exception are ideally the exception which comes at compile time. Okay, it means Java compiler ideally have the ability to understand or to identify the error. Okay, the compile time error. So for example, we are creating a very simple code. So let me start with a very simple code. And what I can do, I can open my Eclipse. There I'm just going to create a new project, file, new project, Java project, next. And then the project name is test exception type. All right. So now I'm just going to create a class. So that class is test checked exception, any name. And there I'm just going with the main, for example, right? So I'll just go with the main. All right. Now there you can see I'm not getting any error. Okay, no red symbol in this. You can identify. Now if I'll type anything like I'll just type sysout hi from Java. Okay, and then I'll run this. Then I'm getting output. Perfect. But if I'll remove this semicolon, then what happens? See, this is an IDE. So IDE has the ability to compile the code. So there the code is compiled and immediately we'll got error. Now, if we forcefully try to run this code, then what happened? Let me run this. I'm getting an message from this Eclipse that a message from Eclipse that error exists in the required project, right? Proceed with launch. I'll say yes, proceed, so that we can get the error. Now you can see that we are getting this error unresolved compilation problem, syntax error. So see, so it can check that exception. Now, if I'll go with the semicolon, so I'm not getting error. So this is just a very basic example. Don't consider this under the checked exception. Now, what I required. Now, for example, I'm just going with calling any external class. So any ZAR file or any library, when we are going for the database connectivity, so we need to provide a library like com.mysql.cj.jdbc.drive. Now, see, this is a simple line, but when I'll finish this with semicolon, now you can see I'll get a red symbol. So what is that? It means this is a external file, okay, or external library. Ideally, this is a library. So that library should be in my project structure, but it might be it is in my project or might be it is not in my project structure. So in that case, if I hover my mouse over there, so it is giving me the message unhandled exception type class not found. So now how we can handle that exception? That exception can be either handled by throw or by try and catch. So if I'll click with this try and catch, so you can see that I got a try and catch block that works. Alternatively, what you can do, you can just go with a add throws declaration. Now you can get this. So there are two ways to implement this, right? So I'll just go with another example for this. Now what we are going to do, we are just going to input the data from user, or we can go with a file input, like, so we know the buffered. Now see, the checked exception is what? That comes at a compile time, right? Now, Java compiler requires the programmer to handle these exception explicitly. So it means it should be handled by a programmer, right? So who are going to program that? That will going to handle the exception explicitly. So how we can do this? By try and catch. Else you can go with throw as well. So throw we had already seen that we can implement throw as well, right? Okay, checked exceptions are what? These all are the subclasses of exception. it means we'll have a hierarchy. Okay, and they all are the subclasses of exception. Most of the times they all are the subclasses of exception, but it do not include, remember, it do not include a runtime exception. So runtime exception like this. So it should be runtime. So I think T should be small. Yeah, because Java follow the camel case, right? Now, looks good. Now what we are going to do, we are just going to create a code with the buffered reader, right? So buffered reader is a class that exists in java.io package, right? So what I'll do, I'll just create a buffer reader, right? So that is in java.io, control is space reader equals to new control is space buffer reader. Now what it does, see, that will going to read a file. Now that file can be a notepad, that can be, ideally notepad is supported by this structure. So what it is looking for a file. So you can see inside the constructor, there I'm getting a reader, right? So it means I need to provide a reader. So I'll just go with a new file reader. Okay, now it there in this constructor, it is asking for the file. So what I'll do, I'll just provide a file. That file name can be any notepad like 1.txt. So it means this notepad should be somewhere in this location. Now I'm getting some error. What is that error? Now you can see that file might be exist in my project structure, or uh, it is not available. So if I'll check my project structure, so there you can see in this project, I don't have any file. So in this case, it should be handled. Who will going to handle that? Again, the programmer, right? So that you can see handled by a programmer. So now we need to handle this. So how can we handle? So guys, if you hover your mouse, it will shows you that you can handle by using try and catch. Now what type of exception? So IO exception, because we are using the IO section, right? So that is input output. Might be input is not available for the output processing. So what I'll do, you can handle it manually. I'll just go with try. So this is try block. And then we have the catch block. So in this catch, instead of this exception, I'll just go with IO exception, right? So that IO exception is inside this package, java.io. So that should be handled. And now it is handled. You can provide a message. File is not available. Okay, file is not in a read mode, is not available. At this point of time, file is not available. Okay, so we can provide that this file is not in my project structure, right? So that file is not in my project structure. Now what happened? Initially, it will go to this. After that, what we are trying to do, if it found the file, then try block will work. Okay, if no error, ideally error, we can say, if no error, then try block will execute. Else, catch block. So ideally, see, that will jump to catch block, right? So looks good. Now what I'll do, I'll just go with a sysout. Reader is my reference. Reader dot read line. So see, I'm just going with this. That please read the line. What line exists in this notepad, right? Now after that, necessary to close the reader. Reader dot close. So that is closed. Looks good. Now we are going to run this code. Right click, run as Java application. And you can see file is not in my project structure. We don't have that file. Okay, so this is the example of checked exception. Now, IO exception is a checked exception because the compiler required us to handle it explicitly, right? So it means IO exception is a checked exception. Why? Because compiler wants this to be handled by us. Okay. Handled by us, right? By the programmer itself. Okay. Now, if what happened? If we did not handle, then what we got? We got a compile time error. Okay. So that is a compile time error. Of course, see what I wrote there. You can see if no error, then try block will execute. So that we had handled already, right? Looks good. Now we have the second type. What is that second type? One second. I'll just want to show you something. The IO exception is the parent classes exception that is handling the exception. So it means, see, the exception which is handling this exception directly, okay, like the IO exception is handling extending this exception. It means that comes under the category of unchecked, right? So if you remember, I was working on one second the class not found. So what I'll do, inside this, I'll just go with class dot for name and anything XYZ, anything I'm looking for. Now, if I'll hover my mouse and I need to add catch clause only, right? Because try is already there. We can go with nested try and catch, but that works. Okay, this will work. The class not found. Now, see, this is the class not found library. Okay, that is handling this. Now you can see that multiple, if you are going with a multiple exception, so you can go with a single try, right? Catch can be multiple. So we can go with a single try itself, right? Now we'll have the unchecked exception. Now, what is unchecked exception? So unchecked exceptions are, one second. Unchecked exceptions are ideally which cannot be handled at a not checked at a compile time. Okay, which are not checked at a compile time, right? So it means we can have some exceptions which cannot be checked at a compile time. Okay, so these exception occurs at runtime due to programming error. Okay, so you can see that these exceptions occur because of programming error. This is the one part, right? Second part, we can say that the logic, right, or input, any this type of error, right? So programming. Okay, so logic input, couple of points can be there. Flow, invalid operations, anything. So and uh, unchecked exceptions are unchecked exceptions. One second. Are the subclasses of runtime. Again, the runtime exception. So we'll go with an example again. So let me create a unchecked exceptions. So there I'll just go with the main. Let me increase the size. Okay. Now there I'll just go with the input. So what I'll do, I'll just go sys out. Enter your very common example. Enter your input. Okay, now I'll just go with a scanner class. Scanner equals to new scanner. And there I'll just go with system.in. Okay, for the user input, right? Now I'll just declare integer a comma b comma c. A equals to scanner dot next int. B equals to scanner dot Next int C equals to A divided by B. Right now, if I'll go and print this out, C. Now let me run this code. Okay, if I'll go with input 12 and 3, we are getting output 4. So see, program is good, logic is good, input is good, no issue in that. But one second, if user is going to input this thing 12 and then 0, if 0 in denominator, then what happened? We are getting an exception. So why this exception occur? Because of the invalid input, right? So that thing done at our end, right? So we need to handle this. So in that case, how we what we can do? See, we are getting error in this line, so we need to handle this. So try block can be there, and after that we can go with a catch. Now, what type of exception we are getting? Let me check. We are getting arithmetic exception, right? So I can copy this. That is inside the java.lang, so no need to import that. One second. I'll just paste it there. Paste and sysout exception is plus E is the reference. Now, if I'll go and run this code, then what happened? 12 and then 0. Exception is divided by 0. Now that is handled. But if user go with this approach, like for example, user is going with 12 and then T. So T is a character type value. Let me press enter. Now what is this? Input mismatch exception, right? So it means I need to handle this as well. So what I can do, I can create another catch block. And in this catch, instead of this exception, you can define your exception, that is input mismatch exception. And there you can provide your own message. So out, please enter integer value. Now guys, if you focus one thing, that exception will not be handled. Why? Because that exception is coming in line number 12. And we started our try from line number 13. So if I'll run this code, let me run this code. Right click, run as Java application, 12 and T. So we are getting again this exception. So in that case, the try block should be start from there. Looks good. Now let me run this. Okay, so 12 and T, please enter integer. Right, so this is about the checked and unchecked exception. So the exception which we are getting arithmetic is unchecked because the compiler does not require programmer or us to handle or declare. If not handled, it will terminate the program at runtime, right? So checked exception are checked by compiler, unchecked are not checked by compiler. So this is also the difference, you can say, that are not checked by the compiler, right? Looks good. Now, subclasses of checked exceptions are exception. Ideally, all the subclasses of exceptions comes under this, and subclasses of runtime exception or error can be comes under the unchecked. And that's it. So checked exceptions are used for conditions that are expected and can be recovered, right? While unchecked exceptions are used for programming error. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you.